think that maybe should be my first question. Why do they call it Marine Corps? Did somebody die? No. Is it because they take dead bodies?
It's not corpse has the E on the end.
150.19, a new world record.
Want to go on the west side.
Okay, welcome back to the Authenticity Podcast, where we are chasing authentic conversations on meaningful topics, shooting out of Croc's Gym in Novi, Michigan. I am Olivia Walker, one of your hosts.
Janae Croc.
The other host. And today we are talking about a topic I'm excited to learn more about from Janae, which is Tales from the Marine Corps. I've recently learned it's pronounced Marine Corps. I'm from Canada. And I thought it was corpse as in like dead bodies. It's just like, I thought it was
would be appropriate.
Something hardcore. Like, what's this about? Anyways, so yeah, Tales from the Marine Corps. And because, and how long are you in the Marine Corps for?
4 years, from 1991 to 1995.
Okay, so that's today's topic. So basically, the first thing I just want to know is why did you want to be a Marine?
So joining the Marine Corps was just something I kind of always wanted to do. Probably started thinking about it early in high school, maybe even sooner than that. But I just always saw the Marine Corps as, the best. It was, definitely revered above the other branches of the military. And I saw it as part of being a part of an elite group and a way to challenge myself. And I just knew that Marines took a lot of pride in being Marines. But yeah, I was a, poor kid from rural Michigan. I wanted to get out of the house, be on my own, be independent. And plus I just wanted to learn a lot of the skills that the Marine Corps taught. And also, the reputation for hard work, discipline, all those types of things. I thought it'd be very beneficial, and I wanted to. The funny thing was, I was so poor, I could have had all my college paid for through a Pell Grant, but I didn't know that. Like, neither of my parents graduated from high school. So part of it was, getting money for college, GI Bill and stuff too, because I knew I wanted to go to school and get an education as well. But yeah, just something I wanted to do, and I felt like a good way to challenge myself and develop some skills that I thought would be valuable. So I enlisted my senior year in high school, and then there was like a little bit of wait at the time. So there were 6 months from the time I graduated high school till I left for the Marine Corps. I didn't actually leave until December 16th of 1991. And
did you have to, in that period of time when you were waiting, did you have to do anything? Like, were there fitness tests? Were there, like, how did you apply? Did you have to?
So there's recruiters, stationed in, local cities all over the country. Mm-hmm. And basically I went to the nearest recruiting office, met with the recruiters. So they came to our high school, they administered what they call an ASVAB test, and they do that for everybody that's going in the military.
What's that?
It's like a general aptitude test that you take.
Is it physical or is it mental?
No, mental test.
Okay.
And so it's, I forget how many questions and stuff are on it, but it's a general aptitude test. There was some basic math, problem solving. There were, different types of basic skills and knowledge. And then that would be, sometimes that would, as I'll explain later, when I got recruited into presidential security, they used it for, like, people who scored really high on it would be sometimes recruited into different, or qualified for different fields and stuff. Okay. But you had to meet certain minimal levels to get in and things like that. And then there were also physical standards for the Marine Corps you had to meet. So the Marine Corps Physical Fitness Test, they call it the PFT. There's a 3-mile run. Well, I think they've changed a little bit then. I think the run in the 3-mile run, pull-ups, and back then it was sit-ups, and I think they've changed it. God, I talked to a newer Marine recently, and I'm trying to remember if they do like a time plank now or something like that.
And this is before you actually get to the training? Or?
Yeah, so you have to be able to meet minimal standards, which was not, I don't remember what the minimal standards were. I was worried about reaching the maximum.
Yeah, but do you show up like to a place to do this testing, or do you, okay.
So like they have, depending on when you leave and stuff, but you go to this recruit thing, they would have, I forget what they called them, but like meetings, like I can't remember if it was every few weeks or once a month, and all the recruits that were getting ready to leave for boot camp had to show up, and they would do like basic military stuff. They'd show you a little bit about marching, a little bit about, you know, what boot camp was like or to get you ready. And then we would do a run, you do pull-ups and push-ups and sit-ups and basic physical stuff. And you had to meet, I think for me, it was never a concern. So, but I think any of the recruits are like, you know, like I said, they had to meet a minimal standard. So if you were on that bubble, if you couldn't do this run in a certain amount of time, you couldn't go to boot camp. So like they'd tell, like, say, let's say, you know, somebody was not a very good runner, they'd say, okay, you have to get your run time below this before you can be accepted. And so you had to be able to do X amount of pull-ups and X amount of sit-ups or whatever before you could go to boot camp.
And that makes sense. Like, is the actual training, I assume, is considerably harder than the testing that they give you, right?
It's
like,
just, and you do a ton of it. I mean, there's physical training every single day in boot camp.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then the thing is for me too, I had never left the state of Michigan before I left for boot camp.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you know, poor kid, we never traveled, never went on vacations and things like that. So I had never been out of Michigan. So my first time I ever been on a plane, first time I ever left the state. And
did they provide, like, do they pay for you to fly out there?
They do all that. And then also there was, you have to go, it was called MEPS, and it was in Lansing, the capital of Michigan. We had to go to MEPS, and that's like a recruiting station, and we had to go through basic physicals. They checked a bunch of stuff like, you know, medical records. I'm trying to remember if they gave us vaccinations then or not. But it was a very weird environment. It felt very, I don't know, like some kind of dystopian thing from the future where you're in this, like you're just a bunch of people in lines, you know, getting, you know, all these medical tests. No one was talking. And it was, I don't know, you felt like you're being processed into like
creepy,
prison or something.
Interesting.
But yeah, and I just remember, and it was, you know, dead silent. There was one funny thing that happened. I think they were checking for hemorrhoids, so we were all standing in line. Yeah.
That's an actual test? Why would they test for that?
Because I guess if you had them and you went to boot camp, it could be a problem if they were actively
that sounds
bleeding or something.
A little suspect to me.
But
are you sure it wasn't just you?
Yeah. But anyway, I just remember this, that so we're in these, like I said, you're in all these long lines. We're not allowed to talk. It's so quiet. And it would be very much like, you know, they, you know, step forward, you know, do this, blah, blah, blah. All right, next. And then it just, like, you're just being processed through.
Yeah,
and
I could see that.
to check for hemorrhoids, you had to step forward, drop your, you know, drawers.
Like fully naked?
I think we were in t-shirts and like underwear, if I remember correctly, or maybe a pair of shorts.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, dude, this is
we should look up if
they
they still do it today, because I feel like...
I don't know. I mean, it was just all this medical testing. So anyway, so you step up and they're like, you know, turn around, drop your drawers, bend over, spread them, and then they're like, all right, next. And like, you know, just every 5 seconds. Well, then this one kid, and everybody's nervous. Nobody knows really what's going on.
I'd be nervous too.
And so this kid, like few people in front of me, you know, does it, and he's like, you know, bend over, spread them. And then he's like, okay, next. And the kid just freezes there. And like he's standing bent over with his cheeks spread.
No.
And he's like, next. And then it's dead silent. And then somebody blurts out, I think he's waiting for something. And then everybody's like, you know, a bunch of immature humor.
Poor kid.
And but yeah, it was just a kind of a weird environment. You're there for like an entire day. And
so like, okay, not to get stuck on this topic, but like, so if you have hemorrhoids, you can't be a Marine?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's we should probably scratch this whole part. But it's a bunch of physical tests, and they're just like screening to make sure you don't have existing injuries or medical problems that are going to be a problem during boot camp.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'm sure if you had bad hemorrhoids and they're actively bleeding or something, or they need to be operated on, then yeah, you're probably not going to boot camp right away.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so anyways, moving on. So you did all this testing. You flew on that was actually after you flew. And where do you?
That's before you go.
Before you go. Yeah. So where do you? Once you go somewhere, is there like a place where everybody goes?
So in the United States,
where is it?
For the Marine Corps, there's only 2 boot camps. There's one in San Diego. And one on Parris Island. Parris Island's the one everybody knows about. It's off the coast of South Carolina.
Okay, it sound like both really nice locations. At least. No, okay.
I mean, this is training. It's not.
Right. You're not going to the beach in San Diego.
I mean, the people who go to Parris Island love to make fun of the people who go to San Diego, and they call them Hollywood Marines and stuff. Really, the training's very similar.
Yeah.
Like the thing is that in Paris Island, like you have sand fleas and stuff that I guess bite the crap out of you, and you're standing at attention. And
Okay.
and so my buddies that I at that time, typically the dividing line is the Mississippi River, which goes through the center of the country. So everybody west of the Mississippi goes to San Diego. Everybody east goes to Paris Island.
Okay.
But Michigan's kind of funny because it's depending on how many recruits are going to each one. If one's busier than the other, Michigan will be sometimes sent to Paris Island,
Right,
sometimes
okay.
sent to San Diego. And I my entire group, and we had a bunch of Marines, half my platoon was from Michigan, so we were all sent to San Diego. And so like in San Diego you have the heat, and depending on the time of year you're there and stuff, but the mountains, like a lot of our, like what we called back then, like our forced marches with all our gear and stuff, where we called them humps. And so all your humps were up and down mountains, and so
Right,
that
okay.
you know, obviously made them more challenging, stuff like that. And then Paris Island, they had the sand fleas and other stuff, but both places are hot. And then in San Diego too, in the summertime, if you're up on the shooting range at Camp Pendleton, which is about 80 miles north of San Diego, there'd be like rattlesnakes and tarantulas and stuff crawling around on the shooting range, and because it's basically like desert out there.
Right,
And
okay.
but yeah, both. I mean, regardless of where you go, that's they're set up to be pretty much identical training. But those are the only two places for the Marines. And so I went to San Diego, and yeah, you get off, and it's just like you see like in a lot of movies and stuff where they have these footprints on the sidewalk. You pull in on a bus, and drill instructors hop on the bus and start screaming at you right off the bat.
Really?
Yeah, like it's instant culture shock. Like, so yeah, so you're sitting on the bus and they're, get off, and just yelling and screaming at you, and everybody's like,
You're like, oh god, yeah.
and then you get on the footprints, you line up the footprints, they march you in, and they right away they get rid of all your personal belongings, they lock everything up, and you don't get that back until like a day or two before graduation.
Interesting.
And you're given clothes, and initially we were put in like gray sweatpants and sweatshirts that had our platoon number stamped on them. And but yeah, you're just all given the same clothes. Your heads are shaved right away. They take you to the little on-base barbershop. Everybody's heads get shaved. And then you spend 7 days in, I mean, and this is back in the 90s. I don't know how much this has changed since then. I feel like it's probably fairly similar, but maybe has evolved a little bit. And boot camp when I went through was 13 weeks long. But the first week is called receiving, and it's a lot of like them, getting issued all your gear. You're not with your actual drill instructors yet. You're like in a temporary holding area, and you have different drill instructors, and they yell and scream at you and everything, but there's no physical. For the first week, they allow everybody to acclimatize to the different environment. Like coming from Michigan, it was in December.
Right.
So I'm coming from like, below zero snow and everything to, San Diego, I think at the time was probably like 70 degrees or something. It varies, but it was definitely much warmer. And so you don't do much physical stuff for the first week, but it's just a lot of running through, filling out lots of stuff, taking some tests, things like that. And then after a week, you're dropped to your real platoons, and that's when the real training starts.
Okay.
And then like a typical day is the thing I was really impressed about the Marines in boot camp was that how efficient everything was. Like when you first get there, you feel the thing is it's a whole process to break you down and then build you back up. When you get there, you feel like you don't know anything. You don't understand any of the rules. You don't understand the environment. You have to talk in the third person, which is weird to get used to at first. Yeah, because you haven't earned the right to be a Marine, so you're just a recruit, and you speak in the third person. You can't call yourself a Marine. Actually, I had a friend. I served with at Camp David. His last name was Marine. His entire family, like his dad, his father's grandfather, his great grandfather, had all been Marines, and they actually changed their name to Marine. His name was Keith A. Marine.
Oh my God.
And then, but when he was in boot camp, he was not allowed to call himself Marine because they call you by your last name. Like
so he'd be like Keith or something.
No, Recruit 33.
That's hilarious.
He was just a number, and then. But yeah, and so everybody's recruit, whatever. And when you have to request permission to speak, you speak in the third person. You would say like, Recruit Krajleski, request permission to speak, sir. And and then they'd say, speak or whatever, or shut the fuck up, or whatever. Yeah. But it's all very structured, but you learn pretty quickly. But yeah, within a couple weeks, you're literally, so like, at 7 a.m., lights kick on, and drill instructors screaming and banging at you, and everybody, you leap out of it. So it's all bunk beds, just a big open. For anybody who's seen the movie Full Metal Jacket, which was a movie about Vietnam.
Yeah.
But the first half of the movie is all about boot camp.
Yeah.
That is almost identical to the experience I had.
Really?
Yeah, it's very, very accurate. The guy who played the role of the drill instructor was an actual drill instructor in the Marines. But yeah, that is very, very much exactly what it's like. You just a big open squad bay, racks of bunk beds, 60 to 80 recruits or whatever. And when the lights come on, there's yelling and screaming, you jump out of your racks, you and your rack mate, whoever's, one guy's top, one guy's bottom, you make your racks, they're made, you have 18 inches of white, the fold is 6 inches wide, the angles are at 45 degrees on the folds, and you together, you both, like one's working on one side, the other's working on the other side, you make both beds, and you get fully dressed, and that's all done in less than like 30 seconds. And you just get really efficient at everything. And we would do so much so fast, and that was really impressive to me. And then it doesn't take long after a few, you get better and better, but after a few weeks, like everything's like clockwork. You can't, like, you don't go to the bathroom when you want to. Like, we would get a brief break after like each meal, and you'd eat 3 times a day. And even eating, like when we went to a chow hall, they'll tell you got 10 minutes to eat, but then like 30 seconds later, they'd yell out 5 minutes. 30 seconds later, 1 minute. So you literally had probably 60 to 90 seconds to eat your food half the time. Wow. So it's like you got as soon as you got your food, you sat down and you're just woofing it down. Right. And whenever you didn't finish, when they said it was time, you didn't finish. But like I made sure I ate every crumb every day. And the same thing with like bathroom. We'd get, you'd march everywhere in formation. You didn't go anywhere alone. Like we did everything as a platoon. And then when you get back, you'd fall out and you'd sprint from being in a formation outside to back in front of your racks, like all lined up in formation again. And then they allow you to, we call it the head. And then, because they use a lot of naval terms in the Marines. And you'd say you had 2 minutes to use the bathroom, but really you had like 10 seconds. And so you'd really have everybody sprinting into the bathrooms, 5 guys around each urinal, all. And that was the only chance you had to pee until like 4 hours later, and you better hold it. Like you have no choice. And then like you really, to go number 2, that was the only time you had time to do that. We had 1 hour of what they called square away time at night at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. But you also had to press your uniform, polish your boots. If you wanted to write letters home or do anything like that, it was the only time you had to do those things. Right. It was the only time you could like talk to the other Marines, but you had to keep it low. Yeah. You couldn't be like laughing and joking around. It was the only time you could use the bathroom uninterrupted, and you had to shower and all that stuff, and you had 60 minutes to do it. Yeah. I would bust all my stuff out as fast as I could, and then we had a little bit of weights that the drill instructors brought in.
Lift?
Yeah, and I would lift, because I was trying to maintain my strength, and everybody thought I was crazy. Like, we've been doing stuff all day long. Why do you want to lift weights? I'm like, I don't maintain my strength, And,
nice, that's cool.
And, but yeah, then they assign one things too. They assign squad leaders and a guide. So there was four squads, and then a recruit was assigned as each, like a leader to each squad, and then there was what's called a guide, and the guide was like basically the head recruit. And they carry what they call the guidon, which is the flag that has your platoon number on it. Okay. And those are considered your top recruits. And so that was a goal of mine right when I got there right away. Like I told myself, I'm going to work really hard when I get here. I want to be a squad leader. I want to be the guide. And then I became a squad leader pretty quick. And then I remember one day I was after being there for a few weeks, and we were doing a bunch of stuff, and I was with my senior drill instructor, who's the head drill instructors, and different drill instructors have different roles. Okay. So you have one that you figure it out a little bit. You have one that's called the heavy. The heavy, his job is to be mean 24/7, like just to be super hard on you all the time. Yeah. And your senior is the head drill instructor. He's in charge of the other drill instructors, and his job is to be more of kind of like a father figure or a mentor and a leader, but ours like to be in heavy and was mean his shit anyway. Okay. Yeah. But he kind of took a liking to me. He was like a jack guy and a really good Marine, and his name was Staff Sergeant Grayvold, and he just kind of took a liking to me, and some of the other drill instructors would refer to me as Baby Grayvold and stuff like that. And I think they didn't like it, but he saw that I worked hard and I pushed myself. And
is that how you got that spot as the squad leader or whatever?
Yeah, so like that, like there was one day I was doing training with him, and I just like worked really, really hard and tried to stand out. and hope that he would notice, and he did. And at the end of that day, he promoted me to the guide. But then you have a lot of responsibility too. You represent the whole platoon, and you're you're expected to be the best recruit in the platoon.
Yeah.
And I was like, shoot, I'm like, am I ready for this? Like, I don't want to screw up. I don't want to do this, do that. And but your days were basically all training, whether it was weapons or, hand-to-hand fighting. We did a lot of, one thing I was surprised by, we did a lot of Marine Corps history, a lot of learning about battles and stuff like that. Yeah, no,
I could see that for sure.
And then, but yeah, those were basically our days, like training nonstop, quick breaks for meals, right back to training, lots of physical conditioning, obstacle courses, stuff like that. And, and then a lot of, marching practice and things like that.
Yeah,
too.
like what kind of physical conditioning? Like, so say somebody, and I know this is obviously in the 90s, so it's not necessarily current, but if somebody was like trying to prepare for that, what kind of things?
I would say just be in basic, good physical shape. So be able to run several miles without a problem. Be lean, and like the obstacle courses, you got to be able to climb ropes, be able to do lots of pull-ups, physically agile, quick, good endurance. But for me, like, I was a good athlete, and I, trained all the time, and I didn't find the physical, that's where I was able to separate myself, because the physical stuff for me wasn't as challenging, but it's the mental aspect. And you realize, like, that's what's more challenging, because it's not just, you're thrust into this different world where you don't understand any of the rules, you don't understand how everything works, you're being yelled at, it's a very high stress environment. But the sooner you realize, like for me, like there was a day as guide, everything I did was wrong.
Right.
And they were trying to break me. And in the Marine Corps, they call it you're losing your bearing. So what they want to do is they want to condition you that no amount of stress is going to cause you to break down and freak out.
Right.
Like you're going to be able to maintain your discipline, maintain your focus. So they try to stress you out really bad and try to get, and like one day they were trying to make me angry. They're trying to get me to freak out. And so everything I did was wrong. And they're just doing stuff like, so I'm responsible for the platoon flag, the guide on.
Yeah.
And we'd go into a class, there was a guide on holder, like a rack outside, you stick it in there. When we come out from the class, guide on's not there.
Okay.
They threw it over these bushes into the mud, and then it's my fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, guide, that's a real good job. Our platoon looks like crap. Our guide on's dirty and everything. They're screaming, yelling at me. Then we're marching. I'm marching too fast. I'm marching too slow. I'm veering right. I'm veering left. No matter everything I did that day, they told me was wrong.
And did they do that to you because you were the guide, or did they
I think
do that
they were
because...
especially trying to, they do the kind of stuff like to everybody, and to the entire platoon.
Right. But more so,
I think they were trying to make sure that like I was capable of filling that position. They were testing me that day. They picked a day and said, okay, let's see if we can break the guide.
That's fair, yeah. Because I remember my one buddy who's he was like higher up in like one of the Canadian armies. He was telling me, he said something different, like as in he's like, you don't want to be the best. He's like, you don't want to be the best, you don't want to be the worst. He's like, if you're like in training,
I don't like that attitude, but
I think he just said he's like they try to break, and I don't know if it's just a different process, right? Like maybe they try in this certain army to like make you, because it's almost like, oh, you think you're better than everyone. Like I think I remember him saying stories like that. So I don't know if
there's definitely, I think a lot of the guys, I think most of the guys took that attitude of you want to be invisible. You want to be part. They want you to be part of a team for sure. 100%.
Yeah. Like I think that's what he meant by it.
Idea of,
not that he didn't want to be good, obviously.
Yeah, but no, and I think a lot of people don't want to stand out. Yeah, because if you stand out, like I knew I was putting myself like in the spotlight and under more pressure. I had more responsibility. The thing is, as a guide or a squad leader, you're responsible for the squad. Yeah. As a guide, you're responsible for the entire platoon. Oh, okay. So if they screw up, I'm getting yelled at.
Right. Okay.
And so like,
which is I think basic leadership anyway, right? Like the person that's in charge, you take the brunt. Yeah.
That was one of the most valuable things I learned in the Marines was leadership skills, and actually what I use for a lot for parenting with my boys, like not yelling and screaming at them, and, but no, leadership by example. That was one of the biggest lessons in the Marines. If you want to lead and you want people to follow you, it's leadership by example. Yeah. If you want people to be able to do something, you be able to do it yourself. Yeah. Of course. And that's what my boys like about being honest, having integrity, working hard. I better be doing all these things if I expect the same out of them. And honestly, it was one of the best lessons I ever learned. And I think it was one of the most important things I did as a parent. And I always stress to my boys, like leadership by example. If you bring that up to any of them, they'll say that.
Yeah, of course.
But it was the skills like that, I think, that were the most valuable that I learned. And, but yeah, as far as like, the easiest way to get through boot camp is to try to be invisible. Yeah, don't get in trouble, but don't do too much. I was there to work as hard as I could and stand out on purpose and be the best Marine I could be. And I was rewarded with a meritorious promotion. When I graduated boot camp, they automatically promoted me a rank for the effort and the stuff I did in boot camp.
And is that part of what got you into presidential security, or did you have to apply for that separately?
Yeah, no. So you don't apply for it. They recruit you. It's a process. So how that all worked, and that was a pretty crazy long process. So in boot camp, like I mentioned earlier, everybody that took the ASVAB, if you scored high on the ASVAB, they gave you another test when you got to boot camp. A couple weeks after we were there, it was some really long, crazy, kind of like I would say it's similar, like sort of an IQ type test.
Okay.
And then if you scored well on that, they brought you back and you were listed as considered special screeners. And then you had qualified for all these special jobs that you can't enlist for, that they recruit for. So I remember it was like counterintelligence. It was like Spanish. Honestly, I think it was probably like spy work.
Spy work, that's cool.
Well, there was a job for Russian linguist, Spanish linguist.
Oh, you did speak, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
so they were long schools that were like years long, where I think they taught you to speak fluently, and they didn't give us a whole lot of details, but that's what that was called. But I would my assumption is you'd be doing stuff like that. Cool. And then counterintelligence, and then I saw and they gave us a list of these fields. They're like, okay, you recruits have qualified for these fields. We want you to list your top 3 that you're most interested in, and then we'll talk to you about those. And then they basically start recruiting for that. So that was a long process. So then I see there's a program, and I won't say the code name for it because I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about that, but there was a code name for it. But it was basically presidential security. And I was like, holy crap, you can guard the president? And so I put that as my number 1.
Okay.
And I don't even remember. I know I put Spanish linguist in there, and I remember they asked me,
do you get to speak it, or do you just they'll teach you basically
they'll
when
teach
you go
everything.
Through it?
But I remember I got asked a lot about why'd you put Spanish linguist. I'm like, well, I had 3 years of Spanish in high school, and I grew up around some migrant workers, so I know a little bit of Spanish.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were all asking me, what's your background, what's your ethnicity, and all this stuff. So I think they were looking for people if you already spoke fluent Spanish.
Yeah.
And especially if you came from a Spanish background, they were probably more interested in you. But then, so presidential security was my number 1. And then they ask you, why do you want this, and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And then the whole recruitment process starts. You start going through a bunch of psychological testing. I got interviewed by people from the Navy, NIS, or I forget what the acronyms are exactly, but basically the Naval Investigative Service. Guy comes out from the government. I got interviewed by FBI agents. They sent FBI agents to my hometown to interview my high school teachers, my neighbors, all this stuff. We went through all types of psychological exams, all these weird tests. And this was over a period of months. It continued after boot camp. After boot camp, I went to Marine Combat Training School. And then my next school after that was School of Infantry, so an infantry school. And then I went to Security Forces School. And through all these schools, I was having periodic meetings with like I said, FBI agents. And I'll tell a story about that where I almost got dropped from the program because of something.
Sorry to interrupt. Are all those schools like what's the major component? They're all different. Like you went to all of them on purpose, or they sent you to them, or you?
So it depends on whatever job you enlist for.
Okay, so it's for that.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had enlisted for security forces, which was basically like guarding like nukes, Navy bases and stuff like that. Yeah. And that was the job I went in. My primary MOS was 0311, which is infantry rifleman, basic Marine grunt. Yeah. And Marine Corps, different from the other branches, Marine Corps does not have doctors. Marine Corps does not have regular day jobs and stuff like that. Right, everything in the Marine Corps, they do have an air wing. They do have logistics and stuff like that, but everything in the Marine Corps is to support the infantry. The entire job of the Marine Corps is infantry fighting. That's it. Okay. So everything else that exists in the Marines is to directly support the infantry. But I wanted to be, a Marine, and that's being in an 0300 is what you call it. Like 0311 was the code for rifleman, 0331 was machine gunner, 0351 was a dragon gunner, which is an anti-tank weapon. Cool. Yeah, and then 0341 was mortarman, but 0300s are your infantry. And then it's crazy that this is all from 30 something years ago, and I still remember all those codes. Yeah, remember everything. Yeah. And so I went through all these screening processes and all this stuff, and during these different schools. So then Marine Combat Training School is like basic infantry training, but every single Marine, regardless of your job, went to that. I think they've changed that now. But then infantry schools, infantry training, And then security forces school was specific training to providing security and stuff. It was a lot of handgun, close CQB, which is close quarters combat training, things like that. We did a lot of shotgun, a lot of handguns, a lot of room clearing, things like that. But anyway, so the entire time I'm being recruited for this presidential security program, and initially I'm thinking, like, after I'd take all these psychological tests and I'd take all this and we'd meet with these docs and all this stuff, and every time I think, okay, well, that's it, I'm in, like, and then not realizing there's more stuff and more stuff. And then, and I would find out later that I actually failed the psychological exam, not in that I was crazy or anything, but what they're basically doing is psychological profiling.
Yeah.
And they're looking for certain personalities, and they tell you, don't try to BS these tests. You're not going to understand how they work or what we're testing for, just be honest. But me being trans, I was so worried about being exposed during this, and I specifically remember there was questions in there. Do you ever wish you were a girl? I was like, oh shit. And
obviously answered no.
Nope.
Yeah.
And then there was a bunch of other, questions and stuff. But like I was surprised there was a lot of religious questions, and I was like, man, I wonder why those are in there. And then I ended up talking to a psychologist many years later who did similar type of testing for prisons, and I asked him, I'm like, so what's with all these religious questions? He said actually what they're doing is they're testing for something called religiosity. And religiosity is an extreme belief in religion, and it's highly associated with mental illness.
Interesting.
And so yeah, if you think about it, like a lot of your I'm going to kill the president and God told me to, and stuff like that. So that's one of the things they're screening for. Right,
where you value that like over your actual own.
Yeah, and it's just a sign of like mental illness, like an extreme belief.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure.
And but anyway, so we had these really long psychological tests and all that stuff. So anyway, I didn't find out until I was going to Camp David. You have a final, I was in Washington, D.C. for 2 years, and you have a final interview with the head psychological doc before you head to Camp David to actually do security for the president. And he told me, he's like, I actually didn't recommend you. He's like, it's not that you failed the exam. He's like, I just didn't feel like your profile was the one we were looking for. But what happened was, there was a Marine Corps master sergeant that was in charge of all the recruiting. And fortunately for me, I had worked really hard in boot camp. So like I had a perfect 300 PFT, which is perfect score on the physical fitness test. I scored really high on the ASVAB, and there's a composite score from that called the GT score that I had a really high score on. And I was meritoriously promoted out of boot camp, like I mentioned. And I was a double expert with the rifle and the pistol. And I just worked my butt off the whole time. So I had and they told me, the head psych doctor told me that my drill instructors gave me some of the best recommendations they'd ever seen. And so the master sergeant, when he looked through my whole profile, and he's like, well, as long as there's nothing overly concerning in the psychological profile, he's like, I don't care. I want this Marine. Yeah. And so fortunately, me working really hard kept me in the program when the psych doctor was like, well, and he, in the questions marks on my profile, he said that some of the questions we answered him came back that I was kind of a loner, and that's something they try to screen out.
That's weird. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, because they don't want loners. They don't want people that are going to be susceptible to high stress, and typically loners are going to be more likely to crack under extreme situations. And stuff like that.
I was just being surprised that because I feel like you're very social. Yeah, I
am. When he said, and it was probably because I was worried about being exposed, so I was trying to manipulate some of the questions, trying to think, oh, what do they want by this? What are they looking at in this? And and just like they told me, don't try to BS it, and I did, and I actually almost screwed myself.
Right.
And the guys I remember, the guys who were very honest about it, said that they said it was scary that he profiled them to a T.
That's crazy.
They said he said they're everything that his name was Doc Finley. He was a colonel in the Marine Corps, retired colonel in the Marine Corps that was a psych doctor. And they said it was scary. They're like, he profiled you to a T.
That's so cool. I'd be so curious to take that test and just see what they say about you. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, and but so then anyway, and then so there was 2 times I almost got dropped from the program, and that was one of them because of the psych thing. And then when I was in infantry school, my troop leaders were complete jerks. I was in a company called Alpha Company, and it was known as Alphatraz. And it was just these group of guys that were troop leaders that were kind of wannabe drill instructors, but also just mean. And when you're in Marine combat training school and they knew you were going to infantry school, and they already knew what platoons you were getting dropped to, and if we were screwing something up, they'd be like, good, keep screwing around, you're going to Alpha Company, boys, you're gonna have plenty of time to play there.
Right.
So you knew Alpha Company was no joke. Well, these guys, So during that time, like I mentioned about the FBI agents coming out to interview me, so we were like, when you're in infantry school, you're in the field most of the time. Like during the whole week, you're out in the field doing, infantry training, and then you come in on the weekends, and we'd have like Liberty, what they call Liberty time off on the weekends, and which was awesome being in San Diego. We'd go out to the beaches and stuff, and but anyway, so we're doing all this training. Well, this FBI agent kept coming out to interview me. Well, my troop leaders, I think they were kind of like envious that I was getting recruited for this job, and they didn't want me to miss training. So they would get like contacted and say, hey, this FBI agent's here to see, at that time I was PFC, Private First Class Krajleski. I'd be out training. They just wouldn't tell, they would never tell me, and they didn't want me to be pulled out of training. So he came out to see me 3 times. And it's like a very boot camp environment, so you don't have any interaction with anybody other than your troop leaders.
Yeah.
So I never knew. So towards the end of infantry school, we just got out of the field. We're cleaning weapons. One of my troop leaders walked up to me, and they're like, hey, Krajleski, they're like, you have a meeting over at headquarters and you're late. And I'm like, what? And they're like, you better get over there. So I go sprinting from where we're cleaning weapons, and I sprint, across the base and run to the building where headquarters was at. And I'm running up there's stairs on the outside of the building, and I'm running up the stairs, and I just see a guy in a suit and a tie, like coming down with a briefcase and mouthing anything of it. I'm told to request for Master Sergeant so-and-so. Right. And I get to the desk, and I'm like, I'm PFC Krajleski. I'm here to meet with Master Sergeant so-and-so. And he's like, oh, you're here to meet that agent. And he's like, oh, he just left. And it was just some Lance Corporal sitting at the desk. And I owe that guy my job in presidential security. I wish I knew who he was and I could thank him. But he's like, well, I'll just reschedule the appointment. And then he's like, you know what? Let me see if I can run out to the parking lot and catch him.
Right.
So he gets up from his desk, runs out to the parking lot, catches the FBI agent getting in his car. The FBI agent comes back in, starts chewing me out. He's like, this is the 3rd time I've been out here to see you. He's like, if I didn't see you today, I was dropping you from the program.
Wow.
He's like, for wasting my time and all this stuff. And I'm like, and I was like, listen, you have to understand, this is like boot camp. Yeah. I had no idea that I didn't even know what my meeting was today. I was told 5 minutes ago. Yeah. And blah, blah, blah. And then so I'd like totally drop dime on my troop leaders.
Right.
He's like, who's your sergeant? Who's your XO? Who's your CO? Like, I will make sure this never happens again.
Right. And well, that's not fair.
Yeah, but it was just them being jerks. Yeah. And twice I almost got dropped from the program before I even got into it. And but then you go to Washington, D.C. after you're done with all your schools. There we did security for admirals and generals that worked at the Pentagon. We did security at what's called the 8th and I Barracks, which is the oldest barracks in the Marine Corps. It's been there since 1803. Cool. And they call it 8th and I because it's on the corner of 8th and I Streets in southeast D.C. It's where the home of the Commandant is, who's the top general in the Marine Corps, and other generals that work at the Pentagon, and we did security for all their homes as well as the barracks and everything that's there. And then the Washington Navy Yard is a few blocks down, and that's where the Chief of Naval Operations, that's the head guy in the Navy, we guarded his home. And then there's a bunch of other homes, and there's this gate called Latrobe Gate. It's the main gate entering there, and the Chief of Naval Operations home is right there, and all these other admirals and generals that work in the Pentagon, so we guarded all their homes as well. And that's your like main job while you're there in DC. And you're doing that while you're waiting for your top secret clearance to come in to actually go to either Camp David, where I went, or you could be sent to White House Communications, which we called WACA, and you go there and do security there. And so half of it would be split based on the needs. And then you wait until your top secret clearance comes in, and then you're transferred to one of those. And then eventually I was transferred to Camp David, and then I spent 2 years there. I spent 2 years in D.C. and then 2 years in Camp David, serving under President Clinton. And
so when you're there at Camp David, is that still a boot camp type thing, or is it like you're just working and you have more
DC? And so once you're done with all your schools, that kind of boot camp atmosphere kind of ends. But it's still Marine Corps. It's still like it's so different than the other branches, because like at Camp David you have all the branches. So the Marines do all the security, Navy is basically all the admin, logistics. And then I would tease a lot of my buddies. I had friends that were the Navy guys, but they were weeds and seeds. They did all the, my one good friend was a diesel mechanic, but he mowed grass and planted flowers and did things like that. Awesome, we would tease them. They had the leaf blowers. We call them Ghostbusters. Right. And we give them a hard time. And then there were some Army and Navy guys, Army and Air Force guys, a very small group of them, but they were all communications. They did communication stuff. Okay. And I'd be in the weight room up there. Marine Corps, these guys are you do everything with them. And there's a lot of bonding, right? Because you go through a lot of really stressful and crazy stuff. Course, yeah. You get really close. They become like brothers to you. And So, but you've known these guys for years. You might not know their first name because everything is either your last name or nicknames.
Right.
Like I got nicknamed Crash. My last name's Krajaleski, and someone shortened it to Crash, and they felt it like fit my personality. So everybody just called me Corporal Crash or Lance Corporal Crash. And but then there was a guy from the Air Force, and I ran into him in the weight room up at Camp David, which was kind of cool because Arnold Schwarzenegger designed it and stuff. And
oh, really?
yeah, because he was Bush Senior was in office before when I was in D.C., and then Clinton got elected right before I was transferred to Camp David. And so when Bush was there, he had Arnold redesign the whole weight room, and it had been all updated and everything.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty well outfitted. And my buddies that were there before me got to train with Arnold. He was up there a handful of times and stuff like that. I never did because obviously he was a big supporter of the Republican Party and not Democrats, and so he never came up there while I was there. But anyway, I was in the weight room, and I run into this Air Force, and he's like an E8, which is like a high-ranking enlisted guy, and I'm like an E3 at the time, Lance Corporal. And he's like, hey, what's your name or whatever? And I'm like, Lance Corporal Krajaleski. He's like, no. He's like, your name. And I'm like, Lance Corporal Krajaleski. And he's like, I'm Bob. And I'm like, I'm like, no, Bob, you don't understand. Like, it doesn't work that way for us. I can't call you Bob. And he's like, what's your first name? And I'm like, you don't understand. If one of my sergeants or one of my gunnies or something come in here and heard me call you Bob and you call me by my first name, like, I'm in big trouble.
Really?
Yeah. So like, it's just a very, bless you.
Thank you.
It's a very different world, and it's, there's like discipline, respect, rank is like, a big thing. And so like I said, you'd have friends you've known for years and you don't know what their first name is.
Yeah, that's funny.
And
it's kind of like that a little in the fire department too. And some, you know everybody's name, but there's some people that you don't. You're like, oh, who's so and so?
Like nicknames and stuff.
Yeah,
like
exactly,
that.
right.
Yeah.
So when you're there, like, what's your day to day? Just a brief overview of your day to day doing presidential security. Like, are you seeing the president? Are you?
Yeah, so it depends. Like, I actually had to sign a bunch of paperwork when I left. Like, I couldn't talk about a lot of this stuff for 20 years. But
20 years?
I'm dating myself, but 20 years have passed. Yeah, so everything's like, I'm legally, I can talk about it.
And I'm sure there's like a lot of differences within 20 years,
probably,
right?
I can't imagine what the security looks like now. We were told when I was there that we were ranked as the number 2 most secure place in the entire world, only behind NORAD. Like, it was... There's probably, I'm trying to think of what I can say and what I shouldn't say. Like I said, it's been over 20 years, but anyway, so Camp David, I'll just say this, it's on top of a mountain in the middle of a national park, north of DC, and it's heavily secured, it'd be very difficult to attack. You're in an ideal place to defend.
Right.
It's mountainous. It's rocky and filled with woods. There'd be no way to get a vehicle up there to like ram anything. We were told that the front gate could withstand a semi hitting it at like 60 miles an hour and it wouldn't even put a dent in it. And the way everything's structured, there's no way you could do that. There was a series of multiple gates, and it's pretty, when you get up there, it's funny because you first get up there, like, man, this is so cool, and like you have this underground stuff and like all kinds of crazy stuff. And but then after that, it's just like another job.
Yeah.
So like our day to day, so we were security, so it rotated. You did 2 days on, 2 days off, and then the weekends 3 days on, then 3 days on the following weekend. So you do a 2-week rotation, and then every third week was a week of training. So no matter what you do in the Marines, you still are a Marine. So every third week was doing, infantry type training, and we might be in the field for a week doing that. We might be doing marksmanship stuff.
Okay.
I got to do some cool stuff. We got put through like a handgun weapons course by like a top FBI instructor. We went down to Quantico where they train FBI people. We got to do the leader's reactionary course, which is like an obstacle course that's almost like an IQ test as well. And like it's all these like obscure challenges and stuff that you have to do. But I got to do a lot of cool training, but yeah, it was, so that's what life was like there. Basically 2 weeks of security, and then we did split shifts, 4 hours during the day, 4 hours at night. They don't want you on for too long because to maintain your attention and focus. And and then I was up there for 2 years, so I went all the way from being a simple perimeter guard to being corporal of the guard and overseeing like the shift when I was on duty. And without going into too much details, but it was, like I said, it was definitely what we called high speed, low drag at the time. Okay. And I can only imagine the kind of stuff they have now.
Right.
And, but there were some funny things, like one funny tale I'll tell you real quick. We had a first sergeant who was very motivated, loved the Marine Corps, like, like we'd say bled green, and but wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Okay.
And so they would run like, drills, like fake drills, like an intruder or, different stuff like that. They'd set off an alarm or whatever, and we'd respond to it, and they'd make sure we were doing all the proper procedures. But the thing is, part of this is, like, we do our proper procedures, you have halting commands, but like, if they don't listen to your commands, like, you kill them. Like, literally, you got 4 or 5 Marines surrounding you, shotguns pointing in your face, you don't run. You don't, like, they tell you get on the ground and, get face down, and you better do it.
Yeah.
And so everyone understood this except for this one first sergeant.
Okay.
And we'd have him surrounded, like we'd pin him, trap him in the, woods or up against fence or whatever. And, he'd set off an alarm and then try to hide on us. We'd, whatever, find him and corner him, halt him, and then he would just take off running. And we're just like, and we would know, like, recognize that's first sergeant.
Yeah.
And but so we had to have the corporal of the guard and stuff, we had to have a talk with like our XO and our CO and be like, somebody has to talk to first sergeant and tell him to stop doing this stuff because he's going to get killed. Because,
somebody's going to act out a reaction or
you're
something.
You're going to get some new guy up there who's, and the funny thing was too, so like I said, this is in the middle of the mountains and stuff. So you get guys that grew up in the city who had never been in the woods, and they'd be freaked out there in the middle of the night in the winter, and like, you hear stuff in the woods and all this kind of stuff, and a little bit jittery, and but we're like, first sergeant's gonna get himself killed because he's not doing what he's supposed to do. He's not following our commands. He'll just take off and run, and like by our protocol, we should drop him if he does that.
Yeah.
But we know it, we recognize it's him.
Right.
And so we're like, but then we were getting so frustrated with it. And then because then he would just take off and run. We'd corner him again, he'd run again, and we're like, dude, what are you
What's the point? You're
do?
not, what are you trying to teach?
And he didn't understand that. Like, I don't know, he thought he was being evasive or something, and we're like, dude, you're gonna get your head blown off. So anyway, so we talked to our command, and eventually they just took away his ability to do alarms. They're like, you have to stop.
Yeah.
And
like, rightfully so.
Yeah,
it's like that's dumb. Like,
so he was just the guy, like I said, he was a super motivator, but just not like, didn't understand the concept of the alarm, like the purpose of the drills and how much danger he was putting himself in.
No kidding.
And but yeah, so that was life up there, and it's weird because it's like, it sounds really cool to talk about and go back on, and I got to do some cool other things, like the United Nations conferences, and we did security for Clinton's inauguration parade. But when you're doing it, it's a job like anything else, and you're still a Marine. We still got paid the same. I didn't get any extra money.
Oh, really? Interesting.
No.
I would have thought. Yeah.
No, everybody's thinking, oh, you must got some kind of special pay. Nope. You want to know what I got paid?
What?
When I first got in the Marines in 1991, I was getting paid $305 every 2 weeks. So $610 a month. Now, granted, inflation.
At least it's U.S. dollars.
Yeah, U.S. dollars. Yeah, they're Canadian. I've really been in trouble.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. Yeah, you weren't paid.
Yeah, that's not much. Like,
I know.
Obviously, cost of living was less back then, but still.
It was still like nothing. We were basically well below the poverty line. And,
that's crazy.
Pay has gotten better from what I understand, but it's still not probably what it should be for the amount of hours we work, what we were doing, what was required of us. And but like I said, I got to do some. I had some really cool experiences, like the inauguration parade. For Clinton's inauguration, and for those people who are familiar, when the president gets elected, they have a big parade, and it's usually through D.C., and they parade down the street. So it's a big celebration, right? So we did security along the streets, and we were in uniform. They wanted us to be a physical presence, basically to deter anyone from doing anything stupid or people making some kind of attempt. And so we had Marines, like, we lined the streets on both sides before Clinton came down. And one funny thing about Clinton is he was late for everything.
Oh, really?
He was always late, never on time, and which was frustrating for security. He drove the Secret Service nuts. And so he was late for his inauguration parade. And we were rotating every 15, 20 minutes, our shifts. And my shift happened to be out when he's supposed to be coming through. Well, he was like an hour late. So we ended up being out there for over an hour because they didn't want changing shifts going on while he's coming down the street. And it was a super cold day that day. It was really windy. It was lightly snowing
honestly,
and blowing.
That's the worst. You're just so cold and just standing there.
Yeah,
I've done that a lot too.
Standing there and stuff. But one cool thing that happened, so there were no, nothing security wise or, it happened or anything like that. But like a lot of famous people show up for the inauguration parade. And one cool thing was Jack Nicholson happened to be walking by, and it was the funniest thing was this one guy, his last name was Lamoureux. And so we had just gotten off shift and we're standing there in a group, like basically just waiting to go back out. and Jack Nicholson walks right by us, and Lamoureux blurts out, and it was like as if they were like old friends. He goes, Jack, and Jack Nicholson like turns, and you also have to remember, I don't know if you've seen the movie A Few Good Men. So it's a courtroom drama with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson, but he plays this super hardcore Marine Corps colonel.
Oh, okay.
So like the epitome of a Marine, right? Like this, and so we had all just seen this movie. And then and we see Jack Nicholson, and we're thinking the colonel, you know, like, oh man, this is awesome. This guy's so hard. And so then, Lamoureux's like, Jack. And sorry, excuse me. So Nicholson, he comes right over. He was goofy. He was super funny.
Well, I would think that, yeah. Like
it's kind of how like interviews and stuff. But he comes over, he's like, hey, Marines, shakes all our hands, talks to us for a few minutes, kind of jokes around. And then before he leaves, he turns around, pops us all a salute, and then walked off. And it was just a really cool interaction.
That's cool.
Just kind of a goofy guy. But yeah, stuff like that would happen sometimes, you know.
That's neat.
It was really fun. Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you, kind of like switch gears a little bit, but just what was the hardest thing that you had to do overall in your Marine experience, mentally and physically?
I would say, so physically it was probably what we called humps, marches, and I think the Army calls them rucks or
I think rucks.
Yeah, but basically marching with a full pack and everything, and it's just because what it is. So we would average 4 miles an hour, and 4.5 miles an hour. That's a really fast walk.
Yeah,
like it's about as fast as you can walk without running.
Yeah,
you're carrying a pack that's loaded full of all your gear. You're carrying a rifle. And a lot of times you're carrying other weapons. Like we'd break down a mortar and share it between 4 people. But like the heaviest part, we had an 81 millimeter mortar barrel, which weighed 44 pounds. And so it's like this long, it's like this thick around, you know, solid steel. And I would just volunteer to carry that because it was the heaviest piece. And like I was really good at humping. And so I'd be like, hey, I'll take that piece. I'll carry it the entire time. And then but yeah, so you're walking 4.5 miles an hour, full pack, flak jacket, helmet. It's like 90-some degrees out. You're going straight up and down the steepest. And they would purposely pick the most challenging. All the mountains out there had nicknames. There was like Old Smoky, and there was one called Mountain. I could bleep this, but Mount Motherfucker.
Yeah.
And because it was so steep that when you looked up at it, it looked like it went past vertical. Like, how the heck are we going to go up that?
What's the altitude like out there, too? Is that...
I really couldn't tell you. I mean, it's like probably a few thousand feet. It's not like where you need oxygen or anything like that.
No,
it's
but
not like above a mile.
Like if you're from somewhere where it's super low and you come out there and you're like...
Yeah, it's not like, I mean, you're near the ocean. So like at the base, it's you know, sea level, but then you're climbing the mountains. So probably 1,000, 2,000 feet, something like that. But it's just, you know, all the elevation. So you're marching, carrying all this crap, and like you're hot. It's just, so basically what it is, you're just in pain the entire time. So it's really like, it's mentally taxing, and you're just, like we just say, you're hating life. You're just hating life. And for me, you march single file, and you were allowed, if the line started to stretch out, you were allowed to pass the person in front of you. So what I would do, we were alphabetical in those schools. We were doing a lot of this training, and I would actually, the way our platoons cut off, I was in the very back. And that's the worst place to be, because then when you get stretched out, it has this accordion effect.
It's hard to,
Yeah, so it stretches out, and then people run to catch up. And then so the back's always doing this, and then slowing down, then running. It was terrible. That's brutal, yeah. So as soon as we'd hit a hill and the line would start to stretch out, I would just go and pass everybody and go right to the front. And then, you know, just gut it out and get up there. And but yeah, and it was a big deal. Like, you could not fall out.
And how long were these? Like, how many hours?
So they range anywhere from 10 miles to 26 or 24 was the longest one we did.
24 miles.
24 miles. Oof. Yeah, and we did it in 6 hours. And you would stop every hour to drink water. They wanted to make sure, and we did have guys get heat stroke and stuff like that. There was one time I was starting to get a little delirious, but yeah, they would force us to drink like X amount of water, you know, once an hour, and you'd have a brief stop, drink water, and you check. The thing is like, it's kind of similar, like anybody who's ran a marathon or anything like that. Like, if there's anything that rubs, it's going to take all your skin off. You're going to be raw. Your feet blisters and stuff. We do stuff called mole skin to, like, on parts on your feet that would rub. Otherwise, they'd blister up really bad. And then, like, something as simple as your rifle. Like, if you're with your rifle and your arms going back and forth, and your rifle's just lightly bumping your thigh. By the end of it, it'd be a massive bruise, like it just from a light bump, but it just repeated like, you know, hundreds of times.
Right.
And so stuff like that. And like I said, just the heat, the discomfort, and you're going at a pace. That was one of the things, the biggest things I learned was just the mental ability to push through things that were really uncomfortable. Because I remember like one hump in particular, our CO was leading it, and he took off like really fast.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking in the first mile, and this was a short hump, this was only like 10 miles, but I remember in the first mile, like, and I considered myself one of the best athletes in the platoon.
Yeah.
So I knew if I was hurting, like everybody was hurting bad. And so then like in the first mile, I'm like, there's no way I can maintain this pace. He's going to have to slow down.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking if I can't maintain it, like these other people aren't going to be able to.
That's
either.
such a helpful mindset to have, though, realistically.
Yeah. Well,
I remember, so like, not to cut off your story, go back to in 2 seconds, but when I did forest fire out in BC, I had the opposite idea because I'm the only woman, and I was just like, I was dying, and I'm like the complete opposite, right? Like I'm like there, and it was so better. Yeah. I'm like I must feel like I'm the and that gets in your head, right? So that's like obviously having that mindset. I feel like is such a great.
Yeah. No, I took the mindset of and whether it was true or not, I told myself I'm the toughest motherfucker here.
Yeah. Like
and
having
so so that was part of it. Like, and part of the reason I went to the front, and part of the reason I would take the heaviest barrel and the worst piece to carry was, I'm tougher than everyone here, and no one's gonna break me.
Yeah.
And then like, and that's what would motivate me to keep going was like, if these guys can stay, then I better fucking stay, because if I don't, that means I'm just soft. Like I'm just giving up.
Right.
So it was like and there were times like sometimes they would do stuff like they'd test us, and they would just take off. They'd put one troop leader in front, and this was like during infantry school. And he would just go as fast as he could and try to leave everybody. And then, of course, they'd chew you out, yell at you, but I would refuse.
Yeah.
I would not break. And we found out later they were stuffing their packs with newspaper. So while we're carrying all this gear and had all this stuff, the troop leader had a pack full of newspaper. And so one particular hump, that's why, like, if you ever see my feet are all screwed up to this day. Like, all my toenails fell off, and they're all mangled and ugly looking.
Yeah.
And this happened on this one particular hump. So anyway, troop leader, and it was just a 10-mile hump out to a range. But this troop leader, and he was one of the best, like of the troop leaders, he was like the fastest one. So he takes off right away. And then I'm like in the first hill, I get up to the front, I'm right behind him, I just get right on his tail. And then pretty soon, within like 2 miles, like I glance back over my shoulders, nobody in sight. It's just me and him.
Yeah.
And he's just head down, just going. And I'm hurting bad. But I'm just like, I'm not gonna let him break me. There's no way. And so we're going through the mountains and stuff, and I'm hurting so bad, but I'm thinking, he's gotta be hurting too. He's gotta be hurting too. Right. And then then I recognize we get like we're like 7-8 miles in, and like I said, there's nobody else in sight. And so we're going over these mountains, and we're going down the backside. He starts running down the side of the mountain. And so I'm running behind him. Well, your feet are just getting jammed into your boots. You know, you're trying to run, but control all this weight you got on your back and everything. And then then I recognize he starts like trying to stop and turn really sharp, and like, something trying to make me like crash into him or fall down or whatever. And then I'm like, he's doing that because he's hurting and he's getting frustrated because he can't lose me. So that like encouraged me more. I'm like, okay, he's at his max. He can't go any harder. And so like, I am not, but I was so like, I like literally had emptied my tank. Like I had nothing left. And then, so like he just continues to do this. And so I'm stopping really hard. It ripped all the skin off the top of my feet. All my toenails fell off my feet. When they grew back in, most of them fell off a second time, like months later. It messed my feet up bad. But but it was one of the coolest things. We got to the rifle range, just me and him, no one else in sight. He never said a word to me. But we got to the range, and he turned around, he looked at me, we made eye contact, and he gave me a head nod. And
sometimes from those like hard guys too, you're like, that's like the best compliment. You're like, wow, okay.
Yeah, he just looked at me. He was like, like, you motherfucker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was like, and that kind of stuff just built my confidence and my faith in myself. But yeah, that was one of the hardest things I'd done. But like those long humps, because I said it's hours and hours of just, it's heat. It's your legs are burning, your lungs are burning, your body's exhausted, your feet are rubbed raw, the inside of your thighs are raw, underneath your arms are raw, and it's just discomfort the whole time. You're just angry, and like we'd say, you're just hating life. And so you just like mentally like, okay, the next 6 hours are gonna suck, but it'll be over. And you just put your head down, you keep going, and the guys who couldn't hack it, we had you have a emergency medical vehicle that would follow along the best it could. It couldn't follow all the trails, but there were like they had the routes planned where there were like roads close enough somehow, like the Humvees and stuff could maneuver through stuff. So if anybody got heat stroke or got injured or something, we called it the meat wagon.
Right.
Well, it was like shame. And if you were in one of the schools, if you fell out of more than one hump, you were recycled. So you were taken out of that and you were sent all the way back to the beginning of the school and had to repeat everything. Oof. And if you did, I think if you fell out like twice, you were kicked out.
Yeah.
And but that was like a big shame thing. But yeah, so like there was no falling out, or you were no longer going to be part of them. And,
so would you say that's the same, like, would you say both those things are mentally and physically the hardest things that you've had to do, or do you think there were the other mental part of it? So like I said, like there's this culture shock. There's a different like environment, like there's a lot of mental games, right? Mm-hmm. Like I mentioned the day when I was guide and they were trying to break me and I was so close to snapping, because it took me, I didn't realize what was going on in that moment. I'm You're like, what's happening?
Like, no, I'm not marching too fast. Like, no, I'm doing this right. Like, that's not my fault. And like, and then like 3/4 way through the day, I'm like, they're fucking with me. Mm-hmm. Like, and then I'm like, okay, I got this. Yeah. Like, but like I remember, so the guidon has this pointed like spear type tip on it, and I was just envisioning ramming it through my drill instructor's chest the whole time.
Oh my God.
I was like, I was like so angry, and I was just like, I wanted to run over there and just be like, and but it was realizing like, so that, but what were they doing? They were teaching us that any amount of stress, like, because war is nuts, right? Like, it's just, they talk about the fog of war and the stress of it and all this stuff, that you have to be able to maintain your wits and your focus regardless of the amount of stress, regardless of what's going on. And they taught us that in combat situations, that it is better to do the wrong thing 100% than to do the right thing 50%. You're more likely to get everybody killed by like trying to do something and not having conviction in what you're doing than maybe making the decision that wasn't the best, but committing to it 100%. So there were like a lot of lessons like that when you figure those things out, but mentally, like, you're in this environment, especially initially, and you don't know what's going on. You don't understand the rules. You're being screamed at the whole time, but it's all preparing you to operate under stress, without sleep, without food. And that's where I learned, like, anybody who knows me as an adult, like for years and years, I've slept very little, and it's something I'm actually working on and trying to sleep better, and people will be shocked. With the amount of success I had as a powerlifter and as an athlete, you'd think that, oh yeah, I'm 8 to 10 hours a night and everything. No, like for a lot of my adult life, I averaged 2 to 4 hours of sleep, and I don't recommend this at all. And maybe once a week I would get like 6 hours. I did this for years and years, but in the Marines, like, sometimes we'd go 2 days without sleep or whatever, and you're out, you're in these environments. Like I remember 1 week of training we did at Camp David. It was in the wintertime, and it's like freezing rain, like, barely above freezing, super windy, you're soaked to the bone, you're just miserable. And we're out there for, 7 days. And of course, like, combat in real world situations can be 100 times worse. But like, you just get used to being uncomfortable, and it's not fun. You hate it all the time, but that's the mental aspect of, you just keep going. Like, you don't break. You realize, I can operate without sleep. I can operate without food. Right. I can do these things and still perform at my highest level.
Which is actually, like, honestly kind of a nice thing to hear. And again, I would love to get good sleep and stuff too. But there's so much research out now on like how important it is. And I think it's actually really nice to remember, not that you should aim for no sleep, but to remember that you can actually still, because that mindset is so important. Because it's like when you start thinking you need something to be okay and successful,
you don't have it.
And like you reach the peak of your sport without it. So it's like, okay, that's possible. So having that knowledge and keeping that in mind, that's a good example of like, can still do. Your mind is more powerful than anything, right?
And I think it's why, like, I was known for cutting a lot of weight. It's why, like, at my biggest thing in powerlifting was my last 3 competitions, I cut 30, 32, and 35 pounds all 3 times in less than 24 hours. Yeah. And it was all through sweating and stuff like that. And then I had 24 hours to rehydrate before I competed. But a lot of people that mess with mentally, or the same thing, like different competition stuff to me, like, people would complain, oh, the platform's not stable. Oh, that's not the bar I like. You know, oh, this is, I don't like that bench. The height's a little different or whatever. I was like, I don't care. Yeah. None of that matters, because guess what? 1,000 pounds still weighs 1,000 pounds. And I thought I wanted the worst conditions possible. Yeah, because I knew it was going to affect me less than everybody else. Everybody else can be like, oh, I can't bench on this bar. I can't do this or that. I didn't care. Yeah. And the same thing with injuries. Like, I've had 5 tendon ruptures that have required surgery. I've torn pretty much every major muscle group in my body. But that time in the Marines going through that adversity and understanding that I can still function under these conditions, I just literally didn't care. And even now, like even in jiu-jitsu, like one of my first competitions I did in jiu-jitsu, I'd injured my knee in practice. My knee was so swollen you couldn't even tell where my knee was. Like it looked like my thigh just bled into my calf. I went to my first nationals like that, and I so I'm very good at like competing through injuries and around injuries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or cutting weight or doing things, because to me, I realize I can still perform. Like the way I look at it, like I told people in powerlifting, you have 9 attempts. Each attempt takes 10 seconds, maybe, when you're of actual lifting. I was like, you can feel like crap before your lift. You can feel like crap after your lift. You can be tired. You can be stressed, whatever. You got to pull it together 9 times for 10 seconds. So 90 seconds, you need to feel like the baddest mother on the, there or whatever, and that's it.
I feel like you can swear. I feel like we can bleep that out.
I think we're going to bleep a bunch of stuff out on this one. But
bleep out that whole first section, just a whole bleep.
Yeah, it's going to be beep. Yeah. And in the Marine Corps, there was definitely a lot of swearing.
I know. It's actually hard not to, like, consciously not to, but I feel like, I don't know. Yeah.
But I feel like sometimes it's warranted, it just helps really express what you're trying to express. But yeah, that's where I learned like those mental traits, and like to see things that a lot of people saw as a big deal. I don't, because I've been through worse. And I've been through all these things. And like the Arnold, when I won the Arnold, I had torn my tricep partially a week or two before, and my left arm was black and blue from my shoulder to my elbow. And I think almost anybody would have just pulled out. I'm injured. I can't. I was like, I don't care. I just hope my tricep holds together long enough to get my first bench in and get on the board. And unfortunately, it held together for all 3. It did tear a little bit more, and it was bruised. Actually, I hit a PR on bench at that one, and then I ended up tearing it completely a couple of years later. But it was stuff like that, like because I would think about it in confines of like war, combat, like we were taught in the Marines. Like, what are you going to do? Oh, I tore my tricep, I can't fight? No, you're still going to fight. You're still going to do everything you have to do, and you worry about it later. So it's that mentality I took from the Marine Corps that I took to competition and still do to this day. And that's not to say that like mentally I don't ever struggle with confidence, or that there aren't things that I struggle with competition and stuff, but there's a lot of things that's helped me deal with injuries and stuff. I just really don't. You're in pain all the time, and I don't care.
Yeah. That makes sense. I feel like that's a little bit of like I don't want to say easier mindset, but like when you're younger to have that too, like I mean, obviously, like we do a whole episode on competition anxiety we were talking about jiu-jitsu and that kind of thing, and like how that's shifted a bit, but yeah, like I definitely, for me anyways, I feel like as I'm getting older, maybe this is like a cop out on my mentality. I don't know, but it feels like it's like it was so much easier when I was younger to give everything and not care about the results, and now I'm just like, oh god, like do I really want to be blown apart in my body? You know what I mean? I don't know if that's
well, the thing is, it's not, and it's about priorities, right? Like what matters. Like I mean, if you don't want to have surgeries and you don't want to have these things, but to me, and that's one reason. So I'm currently 52. I train with a bunch of people that are like some of them are in their late teens, some of them are in their 20s, some of them are in their early 30s, and then we have some other masters competitors in their 40s and stuff, but like for the most part, like most of my training partners are substantially younger, 20 to 30 years younger than I am.
For sure.
I don't care. Like,
no, of course, yeah.
And like a lot of masters competitors are like, well, I'm a master, so I can't train as much. I can't, do this and that, and that's fine. Like it's, if you're doing this as a hobby, if you're doing it for fun, totally understand. If this isn't a right or wrong thing, and this isn't I'm better or someone's worse.
And I don't mean that
about priorities.
Yeah, like I can't train as much. I would never. It's more like you're actively, if you're not training as much, you're actively choosing that because it's not your priority to. You know what I mean? So that's something.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
But for me, like I'm there to get better. Yeah. And I'm not to say like I'm not the greatest jiu-jitsu person in the world. I have a lot of improving to do in a lot of areas. But my mindset going in is I don't care if I'm rolling with somebody who's 21 or 41. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
And I typically compete below, like they have different groups for masters, but I almost always compete below my age group because I'm looking for more of a challenge and I want to fight people that are tougher. And eventually I'd like to work my way down to competing. And I have competed in the adult division sometimes at smaller competitions, but I want to work my way down to competing against tougher and tougher people over time. And but like I don't think of it that way. So like I'm pretty much training jiu-jitsu anywhere from 5 to 7 days a week, I'd say on average. Sometimes like certain things I might miss days here or there. And then but I do cardio. Like most mornings, I get up, I do cardio first thing. I do some weight training. I would say probably 6 days a week. I basically have like 4 separate workouts, and I just rotate them. And then like I might take a day off every now and then when I feel like. And the same thing with training with jiu-jitsu. I've got better at like monitoring my training and picking my roles and stuff, like who I practice with and how hard I go to not beat my body up as much. I think for a while there, I had a tendency to pick too many hard rolls, and I was beating my body up really bad, and then I'd have to take like a day or two off to recover, or I was just competing banged up all the time. So I've gotten better, smarter about my training. But yeah, I don't say I'm 52 so I can't train as much or I can't train as hard. That's, to me, that's a cop out. But like I said, my priorities are different. Like I said, I'm not that great, and like there's people on my team that kick the crap out of me every day. But my goal is just continual improvement, just to get better, and my age is not an excuse to not do that.
Fair enough.
And I think that mentality comes a lot from the Marine Corps.
So first of all, do you think that mindset is required to be a successful Marine? And secondly, to piggyback on that, do you think that being trans affects that mindset? And
good questions. I think that mindset is absolutely necessary. If you want to do the bare minimum and you want to squeak through the cracks and you want to just get by, you probably don't need to have that exact mindset. But if you want to excel, if you want to be a good Marine, if you want to fulfill your job to the utmost of your capability, then I think like you need to have a mindset of, the thing is like people don't understand. The Marine Corps it's not like you're not going to do a regular job. You're not sitting in an office. You're not selling things. You're literally training for war. And we can have long discussions about the ethics and everything of all that. And that's
different podcast maybe.
Yeah. And that's a whole nother subject. But as a Marine, when you join and you commit to do these things, you signed up for that. And I accepted that. And I accepted that I may have to give my life for my country. Like that's part of my job. That's literally what I've signed up for. Did I want to die? Of course not. But I knew that was a possibility. But that's what you're training for. And so I'm someone I would say, and you know me well, I would say I'm pretty empathetic, and I would say most people would say I'm a nice person. I know in jiu-jitsu I'm often frequently told by some of my coaches I'm too nice and that I should be harder. Like sometimes on some of my roles. Like
I see what you mean. You're not like
I could be meaner, like to be more effective, like I could do things like
is that more effective in training really though, right? Like
in certain, because there is some truth to you play how you practice, right? So there's some truth to that. There's certain situations where I probably should be like not hold back as much, but I'm not there to hurt my training partners, and they're not telling me to hurt them, but like but also like I said, for the Marines though, like you have to realize what we're training for, and if you're not performing how you should be, and especially if it's due to a lack of effort, a part isn't going to get made incorrect. It's not like you're going to lose a sale. Someone's going to die. Like your friends are going to be. So I definitely had less empathy for the guys that were subpar and that weren't trying. And I understand this wasn't, we weren't being drafted. You were there by choice. So like when we had some guys that, came in there and had crappy attitudes and were doing the bare minimum, especially in boot camp, like I was kind of assigned unofficially to keep these kind of people in line and to make them perform. And sometimes it was kind of brutal, and I had mixed feelings about it. Like they would do stuff like they would match me up with the recruits that were underperforming, like we do hand-to-hand combat training, and my job was to basically beat the crap out of them and send them the message that you better start trying harder and you better start doing a better job. And it was unspoken, but it was very clear what was going on. And so they would do stuff like that, and and there were times like we had one recruit, and I did not like this kid because I didn't understand why he was there. He did not put in any effort. He had a bad attitude, and I was like, dude, why? I wanted to ask, like, why are you even here? Like, I don't understand. And we eventually dropped him. So like towards the end of training, my senior drill instructor, and I just think he thought he was a problem right from the start. So we eventually got rid of him. He got kicked out of our platoon, and then he was still with us for a couple of days. Well, when you're in boot camp, your squad bay, that's like your domain. No one else walks in there or enters or leaves without permission. And if a recruit from another platoon comes over and they need to borrow like cleaning supplies or something, they'll come over, they bang on, they call the doors hatches, they bang on the hatch, they request permission to enter, and they do not enter until, and the drill instructor would say, something, and then the whole platoon would be like, enter, spy, enter. That was what we would say.
Okay.
And then they would come in, and if they didn't, if someone walked into our platoon that was part of our platoon, we were expected to physically throw them out of there and prevent them from coming in.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so this recruit, he was dropped from our platoon, but the platoon that he was being recycled to was out in the field doing training, so he was still with us for a couple days before he could be picked up by the other platoon. And our drill instructor senior tells us that, hey, this recruit's not part of our platoon anymore. He's going to be with us for another day or two, but he is considered like a spy. He is not part of us. So when we go back to our squad bay, every time he better bang on the hatch, request permission to enter. If he doesn't, I better see his butt getting thrown out of there. So sure enough, later that day, like an hour later, we're going back to our squad bay, and we fall, we're in formation, we fall out, we're all running inside, and this other recruit, his name was Toughness, and Toughness runs alongside of me as we're running in. He goes, hey, let's see if the guy's name was Cole. Let's see if Cole requests permission to enter if he runs in. And he like said it to me purposely, knowing that. So like I run inside and I pause by the door, and sure enough, Cole, like just like always, just walks right in. I run up, I grab him by the back of his collar, by the belt of his pants. I run him to the door and I throw him out the door.
Okay.
And like we're supposed to do. And like they told us to do, but there was like a series of cement steps outside the squad bay, and they were like wide ones, like 4 feet wide, and there's about 4, and I threw him pretty hard, and I meant to throw him, but I didn't I launched him more than I expected to. He catapults into the air, flies over about 4 stairs, like scorpion, like we call it scorpioning, lands face first on the cement. His back arches up, his feet flip over, and he gets all scraped up, right? Because it's cement stairs. So he rolls over, and I see the side of his face is all scraped, and he's got scrapes down his chest, and he's like, you can see the blood already, and I'm kind of like, I cringe a little bit. I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to throw him down that hard. Well, then one of our drill instructor comes running over, like, what the, bleep is going on? And he comes running over, and I'm thinking he's going to yell at me for like being excessive. He runs right by me. Cole's still down on the ground on his hands and knees, gets right in Cole's face. He's like, that's right, you piece of shit. And like that, blah, 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 and just chews him out. And then he comes back to me and he's like, good job. And
crazy,
but that's the mentality,
such an interesting,
right?
It's such an interesting environment.
You're not training to, do some kind of office work. You're literally training to save lives. Right. And so a guy like that, unfortunately, is going to get people killed. And so that was like, and sometimes like I had mixed feelings inside sometimes, like, man, that was pretty brutal.
Right. It's all what they teach you at the time and what you're training for, right? And like, especially when you're young too, you don't really think necessarily about that. You're just like, I'm here, I'm doing my job,
for me, I was very aware of I was very aware of what we're trying to do and what the consequences were. And I think that's why I was able to do things like I said, when they would order me to basically beat the crap out of guys, like I knew what the purpose was, even though sometimes it,
kind of like
it had mixed feelings about it, but I knew that like in the end it was actually for a good thing, and it could save lives at some point.
So so back to what I was saying before, so about the trans thing. So do you think, like, I know that there's been sort of like a lot of people thinking that being trans would be like not something that you can be and have that same mindset. So like, how do you feel about that as someone that obviously had a great mindset in the Marines and is trans?
So that's obviously, like, I think it's a bunch of baloney for obvious reasons. Like I said, I served a very good career. I was meritoriously promoted. I was selected for special duty. I was screened extensively mentally. I mean, and not just like multiple exams, interviews, doctors, and all this stuff. And I was found to be more than fit for duty, and served my country well. And the other thing is, I was wondering how like a lot of my Marine Corps buddies would feel when they found out I was trans. And I've been out for quite a while now. But like how many of them would support me, and if anyone would turn on me, and the thing is, every single one of them support me 100%. And I guarantee if we brought them into this room right now, there's not a single one of them that would say that I felt like I shouldn't have been there, I should have been kicked out. And I served at a time where being trans was not, you couldn't be in the Marines. If I had been out about it, I would have been booted out.
Right, and that's because of your quality of your work, right? And
I believe everything should be merit based. I don't care.
100%.
I don't care if you're trans. I don't care if you're male, female, whatever. I care, can you do the job?
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
how it should be, and it should be, it's completely irrelevant. And there's just a lot of BS arguments like, well, they're spending too much money on it. The military spends way more money on things like Cialis and Viagra for troops. Like,
Really?
100%.
Like,
oh yeah, if you do the research, it's millions of
that's
dollars.
funny.
I mean,
that's like a benefit that's included, or like,
it's well,
like,
part of their medical coverage or whatever.
Interesting.
And, there's if you can look up the stats. But there's just other things the military spends tons of money. The idea that like, you know, and the thing is, just because you're trans doesn't mean you're getting all these surgeries and you're doing all these things. And it's really a case-by-case basis.
For sure.
For maybe some people, that is a reason why they may not be fit for the particular duty that they're in. You know, like, there's certain situations maybe, like if you're going to have all these different surgeries and things, but that's a case-by-case basis. Saying that you're trans and you're not fit for duty is a total crock of crap. And
it's like any blanket statement about any person or group or whatever. Like, you can't.
And so it's I mean, I have my own personal feelings about how that is, but the idea that transgender people there are so many. You would not believe the number of trans women I know that are prior military and prior Marine Corps. A ton of my trans friends. It's so funny as to how many of us have served in the Marines and different stuff and done very, very well. And so this idea that being trans precludes you from being a good, soldier or Marine or, doing a job, and especially like there's so many different jobs in the military. I have friends right now that are still that are outstanding. I have one that's a good friend that's an Army officer, and she is one of the deadliest people I've ever met with a weapon, and just outstanding and super knowledgeable. And she's an Army officer, and I won't mention her name or anything for obvious reasons. But and I haven't talked to her lately. I'm very curious to know how she's feeling right now with Trump.
She's obviously not somebody that is out that people like.
Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what her. I mean, she transitioned years ago while she was in the Army.
Okay.
And but she's been living as female 100% and been serving for a number of years now, and it hasn't affected her job at all, and she does very well. She's, an outstanding soldier, and I don't know, like, it's been so long since she's transitioned, I don't know if her current people are even aware of it.
Right.
But I mean, I'm sure it's in her records. I can't imagine how she feels, because she's a career soldier, like, and she's been in, at this point, I know, well over a decade, and probably coming up on 20 years. And I can't imagine how she feels, like potentially being forced out after all this time and dedication. And she's someone who, this is what she loves, and this is what she does, and this is who she is. And I can't imagine having that stripped away.
Yeah.
So I think the whole thing's absurd. We'll see what happens. Like, I mean, Trump issued an executive order. There's lawsuits against it already. We'll see how everything plays out. But yeah, the idea that, and this goes for any group, that you're part of X group, so you're not worthy, you're not good, is ridiculous. It's nothing more than discrimination and prejudice. And like I said, everything should be merit-based. If you can meet these qualifications, here's the qualifications. If you can meet them, then you can do the job.
Yeah.
And anything else is absurd. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I have some pretty strong feelings about that for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a perfect example of someone that was a good Marine that, through policies like this would have been lost. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never understand wanting like less people in the military. I thought like it's like a,
I mean, at a time where they're having a very difficult time recruiting and things like that, why are you trying to... I just read some current stats. There's approximately 15,000 transgender service members, and that's based on surveys and stuff.
And I wonder too, there's probably so many people that don't like that are trans that people don't know are trans, right? Like, I don't know if like how, if like, I guess when you like, do you have to shower together? Like, would you be able to see people?
Yeah, well then you're talking about, so there's, a trans person can be trans and not be actively transitioning.
Right.
It doesn't mean 100% that you're going to be on hormones.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean 100% you're having all these surgeries, or then once you've had all these surgeries, if you do have the surgeries, or you've been on hormones for a number of years, that people don't realize that the vast majority of the trans population is invisible. Like, once you transition, a lot of people, I have so many trans friends that no one in their life knows they're trans other than like a couple close friends or family members. A lot of them move, start life over because they don't want to face discrimination.
Yeah,
They don't want
I
to be
get
treated
that.
any different. There's more people that are out nowadays, but there's like the only part of the trans population that's visible that are the ones who, and I hate to use this word, but they refer to it as passing, look like their target gender. And there's a lot of people who are very comfortable being in between genders or blurring those lines, like myself. Like I look different day to day, and had I transitioned younger, I would probably appear much more feminine than I do. But I've been on hormones for years, and and some days I definitely blend into society as just a really muscular woman, depending on where you see me and how I'm presenting.
Just to play devil's advocate, so are there people? What else can you get kicked out of the Marines? I guess Marines. I don't know if that's even like of the Army. Is that a blanket to military? For like, are there people that? Can you be diabetic, for example? Can you have certain other things where you're taking
there's definitely physical conditions.
Like what are those? I'd be curious to know, because it's like what like can they discriminate for, say, like you're taking testosterone every day or something, right? Like is that like, or not?
Honestly,
obviously not every day. It's like once a week or whatever, however the dosage is. But it's like I'd be curious to know that. Like
are there any other precedents that would be similar? Not that I'm aware of. I mean, obviously there was a time not that long ago, like you couldn't be in the military and be gay. You could be a lesbian.
Which is like, it's just, it seems like so completely irrelevant to the job that you're doing, right?
Yeah. Well, all the same arguments we're using. It's same in really these same arguments. So a lot of it will say, well, it's unit cohesion. Like you're disrupting the unit. If you have a trans person in a unit, then it causes you're not going to be as close to
and
them.
Then, they say the same thing about women, and like it's like
the same argument was made with women in the military. The same argument was made with when the military was segregated. People forget the military was segregated based on race. And
really?
Then, I didn't know that, and then the argument was you'll never have unit cohesion. You can't mix everybody up, and they're not going to get along. And they're going to argue with each other. They're not going to, and that was a big argument for keeping it segregated. They've used that same argument for segregation. They've used the same argument for women. They've used the same argument for being a gay or lesbian. And now they're using that one. That's one of the arguments they're using for being trans, is that it'll destroy unit cohesion. It can't work. No, if it affects unit cohesion, it's because of prejudice and discrimination. And those people need to be educated. The problem is too, like I said, so much of the trans community is invisible. A lot of people know a trans person and don't even know that they know a trans person.
Right.
It's one of their coworkers. It's their neighbor. And they have no idea the person they see every day is trans. And it's like, I have so many friends. Like I have a friend who's a chemist that works with a bunch of people, and no one there knows she's trans.
And I think that's part of the problem, like with the discrimination against trans people, is like, you don't. The examples that you see are usually
the extremes,
people that are
right?
The extremes are people that are in the media getting that attention, and like, I don't know, there was some guy on social media that was like pretending to be trans, or like there's people that I can't remember who that guy's, but there's people like that, right? And that's what people see, and they're like, oh, these people are all messed up, but they don't see like the majority of the people are actually just like normal people that are just trying to live their life how they want.
It's just it's this idea too that being trans, and we'll do other episodes on this, and a lot more of the science behind it and everything, but the whole idea that you hear this argument that it's immutable, that sex there's males, females, and that's it. Well, that's biologically incorrect, number one. There's approximately 1% to 2% of the population that has intersex conditions that can't be classified as male or female, and this is literally millions of people. And you don't hear about it because our society is so obsessed with gender and sex that these people just try to blend in. There's surgeries performed on their children to assign them to one sex or the other. But we'll go into that.
We'll do that in another episode.
But this idea that trans people are mentally ill crazies that are delusional. Like I said, I've probably had more psychological testing and everything than anyone you're going to meet, and I was found fit to guard the president of the United States, and and served admirably the whole time, and obviously I've led a pretty successful life and done a lot of other things. So this idea that I'm somehow this crazy nut that's a danger and a hindrance, absurd. And sure. And I think, like I said, the reality is trans people are like everybody else. Some of us are terrible people. Some of us are great people. Some of us are super accomplished, and some aren't. And we're just like every other segment of the population. It's just there's one different thing about us, and that's that we're trans. To sum everything up, basically, like I said, if you can do the job, you should be allowed to do the job, and that's how I feel about military service.
Yeah, I would agree. Cool. Okay. Well, I think we end it there.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for everybody. And if you liked our content and you want to hear more stuff from the future, please, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. And we were glad to have you here and hope to see you again.
Yeah. See you next time.